my dears, and welcome back to my corner of the internet. I'm Shannon, and today I've got another book talk video to share with you guys. And tonight we are talking about Bad Eater and Other Words for Cora Zeng by Kylie Lee Baker. First of all, look at this cover. Stunning. This book, you guys, this book was a wild ride. Wild ride. So we're just going to get on into it. How the book talks here go, in case you're new, is I'll give you sort of the brief synopsis, a warning, then we'll get into the spoilers, and then we'll get more in depth with it. So basically, this book opens up with Cora Zeng and her sister Delilah, and they're standing on a train platform in New York City. It's the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, and so there's not really anyone around on the train tracks. They had to go out because they needed toilet paper, and it took them a while to find some, and they finally did. Now, Cora and her sister are Asian. They have different moms. So Cora's mom was white, and then her dad was Chinese, and then Delilah's mom was, I don't think Chinese, but also Asian. So they're stepsisters technically, and they're waiting for this train, and quite out of nowhere, this man comes. As the train is coming, this man comes kind of out of nowhere, and he approaches them, and he calls them, like, this is so offensive. Or I guess Delilah, he calls Delilah Bat Eater, and then pushes her in front of the train, and she's killed right in front of Cora's eyes. Right? Cora watches it happen. Also, Cora works at a, before the pandemic, it was a dry cleaner. My dog, she knows when I'm filming, and so she starts prancing around. Anyway, so before the pandemic, it was a dry cleaning service. But since that's really died down, they're now doing crime scene cleanup. And as Cora notices, as she goes to these crime scenes with two people who become her friends, they're cleaning up a lot of the crime scenes of Asian women. And it starts to look to Cora like there's a serial killer on the loose that's targeting Asian women. Then it also is a ghost story. It's like a good straight up horror novel. There's this tradition that Cora knows about because of one of her aunts, and July is like the ghost month where hungry ghosts come and they demand to be fed. And there are certain traditions that her aunt tells her to do that will keep these ghosts at bay, that will keep them satisfied. But she refuses to do any of it, and they end up coming for her. And that's basically the premise. So she's grieving the loss of her sister. She's doing these crime scene cleanups, because not only is it Asian women, at every crime scene there's a bat somewhere in the apartment. And then she's haunted by ghosts. The main ghost that she thinks is the ghost of her sister. So that's the premise for Bad Eater and Other Names for Cora Zeng. Before we get into spoilers, before we go, I'll tell you it's unrelenting, and it's dark, and it's sad, and it's a story about grief and loss and racism in America and the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's something you don't want to read about yet. If you're like, it's too soon, then avoid it. But I would definitely recommend. It's either 4.5 or 5 stars for me. Like, I loved it. It wasn't a quick read for me. It took me a few days. Like, when I started, I was like, oh, this is going to take no time at all. But it did take me a while to get through it because it is so heavy. So just keep that in mind when you're reading it. And I would recommend. So if you don't want any spoilers, now's the time to skedaddle. And we'll get into it with everyone else. Okay, now that they're gone. So, like I was saying, she's going to these crime scene cleanups, and they're just being murdered in these horrific ways. Like, cut up, axes, there's blood, there's everything everywhere, and Cora's like, she's kind of desensitized to it. Like, after she saw her sister killed in that manner, there's not a lot that's going to be more gruesome than that, But she's also She's also really germ-phobic, which you'd be like, oh, that's a weird job. But she kind of likes it because it's you're making something clean again. There's bleach, all the heavy cleaning products. And in that way, it's, I guess, maybe comforting. You also get the feeling that life hasn't been easy for Cora. And because of these, neuroses she has, while we're never told about this time, you get that she spent time perhaps in a mental health facility, and she talks about how she just knows things that other people don't know. And that's never really dived into too deep, but it does show up from time to time. So as the crime scenes progress, and then she's being haunted at first by what she believes to be the ghost of her sister, because her aunt was like, you got to burn these papers, you got to say these prayers to make sure that Delilah is at peace and she's not going to come to you during the ghost haunting month. So she thinks it's her sister's ghost she sees, and she can make these ghosts go away by keeping the lights on. They can only exist around you if in darkness, but that includes shadow. So like, even if your lights are on, but something's casting a shadow on your wall, they can get in there. And that's creepy. So, she begins to notice weird things around her apartment. Like her coffee table has teeth marks on it. She's like, oh my God, like somebody's gnawing on my coffee table. And she's very selective on who she wants to tell about this, because she doesn't want to end up back in a padded room in some mental health facility. So the two people that she works with, they're also Asian, and she begins to confide in them a little bit. One night they're drunk, and she tells them the whole story about her sister and how she saw her get decapitated and killed by a train. And they're like, oh damn, like they are fully in it. Like when she tells them, like, now my sister's ghost is haunting me, they believe her fully. I love that about this. Now she's selective about who she tells, but everyone she tells fully believes her. And so they start to try to come up with ways that maybe they can help her get rid of these ghosts, because they also know about the ghost month. They also know about the papers to burn. And as the month goes on, these ghosts are getting more aggressive. They're getting more aggressive. And, the whole thing is that they're hungry, they're starving, they're suffering. So one night when Cora's in her apartment, the fridge is open, and she takes an orange out and she peels it. Or no, she doesn't peel it, sorry. She just takes the orange out and she puts it in the ghost's hand, and the ghost eats it. And she's like, okay, they are hungry. And so then her and her friends, like, they try to help her come up with ways to make this better for her. Like, one of them is like, why don't we go back to the train tracks where she died? Maybe we can find parts of her, because not all of her could be buried, because a lot of it was, when you're hit by a train at that force, her whole body just wasn't there. And they're like, what if we go and find the parts that are missing? And maybe if we reunite her body, like, that'll help her to move on. And so they go there and try that. They don't find anything. All they find are more ghosts. So then they get out of there. And then eventually the guy friend, Harvey, he calls her one night. He's been doing some research, and he's like, listen, I think I figured something out that will maybe help you. And he's like, we got to go meet me at the park, because I'm not doing this in my house, but meet me at the park. And he's like, we're going to try to feed them. So he brings this bag of rice. And he's like, I read if you scatter coins on the ground or rice, the ghost will stop to count them. And it's like impossible to count that many. So it'll like distract them and keep them away from you. So they go and do that. And as he's sprinkling the rice, like tons of ghosts come into the shadows. But they're not counting it, they're eating it. Again, like with the hungry ghosts. She's like, oh my God. So she starts to panic, and all the while more and more Asian women are dying. And then eventually the cop that was like doing the investigating for the case, he ends up dead too. Similar manner. Now she's like, oh my God, like what's going on here? So time goes by, and like it's hard to tell it kind of step by step because it is a bit of a slow burn of a story until you get to the end, and then it's like a snowball to the finish line. So eventually, so the other friend, who I don't know how to pronounce her name, I think it's like Yeffy. She's like, I know what we're gonna do, and it was my plan all along. Before this idiot was like, let's go give them rice in the park, like a bunch of pigeons. She's like, I'm gonna cook up a big feast, all the best meals, and then we're gonna call your sister, and she's gonna come and she's gonna eat it. So they do that, and then the ghost does show up, and then her roommate, like Yiffy's roommate, shows up, and her boyfriend, and they're like, oh great, a feast, like food, fantastic, we're starving. They sit down and begin to eat, and then the ghost eats them, kills them. They're gone, body's gone, fully consumed, blood everywhere. And so now the three of them are like, what do we do now? So they're like, listen, we can't tell anybody, let's just clean up the scene, the bodies are gone. It's no good to call the cops, there's no bodies here. If we tell them, oh, a ghost ate them, they're gonna be like, no, it didn't. So they clean up the scene, try to move on with their lives. Harvey goes home. He calls Cora the next day and he's like, oh my God, I think I know who's doing this. You have to come over. So she goes and gets Yeffy. Is that how it's pronounced? Yeffy? And they go over to his house because his uncle is the one who owned the dry cleaners and now runs the crime scene cleanup business. So they go over and they're going to go find him, and they find him all right in one of the huge washing machines. He's been killed, put in there with these noxious chemicals. He's just in there, and they're like, oh my God, the ghost got him. So then they're like, oh my God. So they get the dead roommate's car, and they're like, let's go to my aunt's house, the one aunt that like is really into all of this and will believe us. So they start going, the car crashes, kills her other friend. So now she's like, now I'm all alone in the world again. My sister's gone. My two friends who, she'd grown to love so much, they're gone. She gets out of the car, the ghost is there. And now the thing about this ghost, she truly believes it's Delilah. But like, it doesn't look like Delilah. It doesn't look like anything. Like, it's got a physical, like, human, like, form, but like, there's no features on the face, like nothing discernible. So she calls her aunt, and her aunt's like, okay, I'm coming to get you. Is the ghost there now? And Cora's like, yes. And then she's like, how do you know that it's Delilah? And she's like, she's got the jade bracelet on that she always wore that you gave her, and it says hope. And then her aunt's like, no, the one I gave her says strength. That's not your sister, or run. So she takes off. Her aunt comes and gets her, and then they go back to the apartment. Meanwhile, but back when the police officer ended up dead, when they were there to clean the crime scene, underneath his bed, they found a little zip drive that the ghost, who we thought was Delilah, now we don't think it is, pointed out to her, and she had pocketed it. She could never bring herself to look at it, but now she does. And on this zip drive, she finds hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos of murdered Asian women in New York City in the past little while. And she's like, it's like 374 or something. She's like, what the hell? Like, she herself had been to like 20 crime scene cleanups. She thought that was a lot. But then she realized, she's like, oh, we were only being like sent to the ones that knew Harvey's uncle. So like there was some sort of connection. So they were only being sent to the Chinese ones. But there were so many other Asian women being killed. And so there's all this screenshots from message boards and like Discord servers of like people, this one guy claiming that it's him doing it, and then others being like, oh, they'll never find out who's doing this. And so they're like, they go do it too, and it becomes this whole thing. So there's the main guy, and then there's all the copycat killers. And then Cora has this moment of like absolute horror when she realizes there would never be a way to catch them because there are so many people doing it. It's so sad. So she doesn't know what to do. She knows she needs to help these ghosts. She knows it. And she knows she needs to bring them peace somehow. So she ends up going out. She just says to her aunt, she's like, there's something I got to do. And her aunt's like, you know what, girl, go do it. Even though her aunt's trying to protect her, she trusts her too. She's like, you go do what you have to do. So off she goes, and she ends up going down. She ends up going to this church that I didn't talk about, but she goes to this one church with her other aunt. And she goes back there because she saw propane tanks. She gets these propane tanks. She takes them onto the subway. She goes to the mayor's house. Because in those documents, she saw the mayor being like, close these cases up. Nobody cares. You've already been given the police department so much money this year. We're not giving you any more. And then the police officer who ended up being killed, he's like, we need to find out who's doing this. And the mayor being like, nobody cares. No one cares. So she goes over to the mayor's house. And in her trip from her house to the mayor's house, she has collected hundreds of ghosts. Hundreds of them. They're all following her. She gets to the mayor's house, pours the propane all over, lights it on fire. And the ghosts, they surround her and they pull her back away from the house to protect her. And the mayor's killed in the fire. And that seems to settle down the ghosts as Ghost Month comes to an end. And, it was the only sort of closure they could get, because there was no way to find all of the men that were doing these things. But they could at least serve some punishment to the man who was like, I don't care. You're not getting any more money. Close the case. And just hundreds of these ghosts were finally felt like they had a little bit of justice, that someone cared about them. Because like she said, a lot of these people were probably there in America on their own, with their families back in their home countries. They came here for a better life, to go to school, for work, whatever the case may be. And a lot of these ghosts weren't laid to rest properly. And she imagines some of their families probably don't even know that they're gone. And so they're just roaming the streets. Like her aunt said, Delilah is not one of them, because I prayed for her and I burned the paper and I did the thing. These ghosts that are so restless, their families don't know, and so they're not properly laying them to rest. So she was like, well, then I'll do it. And it was so good. It was so good. And then there's a chapter at the end where now it's like April 2021. And she's like, oh, the end of the world's lasting longer than any of us thought. But before it gets to that part, so there's this part towards the end where Cora and her aunt go down to the water to light lanterns. And her aunt says this is to guide the ghosts home. And it just says, in silence, they light the lanterns, feed them into the river's mouth, watch them disappear into beyond. Cora's fingers tremble as she strikes the matches, her aunt's bag seemingly never-ending. White sheets begin to bloom in the dark waters. Like butterflies rising to the surface, the ghosts tear through the water, chasing after the lanterns, walking through the river like it's deep sand. At last, there is only one lantern left. Cora holds it in both hands, looks across the river at a single ghost swaying along with the river's pull. She wonders if Delilah can hear her from across whatever expanse she has crossed. If she has heard her this whole time, or if the doors between them are sealed shut. Would you have come back for me, she wants to ask, face turned toward the sky, but she will never know the answer. She presses the lantern close to her face, feels the paper petals scratch her cheek, inhales the scent of fire and river and city grease, and secondhand smoke and blood still on her clothes. She sets the lantern down, takes a deep trembling breath, and strikes the match. And then the final chapter is just about the aftermath of the mayor, and then we get this little glimpse. You're like, okay, great. So this is April 2021. We're like, okay, great. Like, all the ghosts are gone home. And then she's having a snack. She's having an orange. She peels it. She eats some of it. And then she, like, flicks off the light. And in the shadow, a ghost comes. And she gives him the orange and then turns the light back on. So you're like, oh, Cora Zeng, you've got a thing going on here with these ghosts. Anyway, this was incredibly beautiful. Incredibly beautiful. Beautifully written. beautifully told. Incredibly difficult to read, though. Gruesome, gory, socially difficult to read about the things. And, you know, obviously this is fiction, but like especially during the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I'm sure we've all heard bigots saying things like China virus, bat eater about Asian Americans. And I can remember hearing about the horrific hate crimes that were happening in big American cities. And it's like, what in God's name are we doing? Anyway, without getting too much more into that, we'll just leave it there. But I highly recommend this. Highly recommend it. It's unflinching, and it begs you to not look away, and you can't. So there we go, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, my next video is going to be a spoiler-free review for We Love You Bunny by Mona Awad. I got an early copy, a physical copy, plus I got approved for the e-arc that I had requested before I got the physical copy. So I've got all kinds of ways to read the new Mona Awad book, and I cannot wait to share it with you. Bye, guys.